A woman wakes up in a forest and marks down her day and hears a plane arrive. She gets her gun ready, and as soon as a man gets off the plane, she shot him in the head. The former Marine Levi wakes up from a nightmare and drives to the beach and stays till the morning. He receives a text telling him to go to the Marine Corps base, and he decides to pay a visit. Later at the base, Levi meets Agent Bartholomew, and she knows his career as an elite sniper. Also that he has no family left, and she's here to offer him a job in Lithuania. The sniper, Dresa, meets with her father at the cemetery for the anniversary of her mother's death. Her dad realized it's too late to cure his disease, and so he vows to kill himself if he survives till 14th. So that he can reconnect with his wife on Valentine's Day, and in September, Levi wakes up in a plane from an anesthesia-induced sleep. He asks a soldier where they are, but she isn't authorized to talk. She takes all his personal items and tells him they're reaching a no-fly zone, and he'll have to jump now. They will walk the rest of the way to his destination, and Levi grabs the assigned bag and jumps. He lands safely and begins his long journey, which entails lots of climbing, trekking, and camping. Eventually, Levi reaches the edge of a huge gorge and meets Soldier JD, who has been here for a year. But he doesn't know where they are either, and both the men go to the West Tower. It is completely self-sufficient and plenty of wild game to hunt, and on the other side of the gorge. There's the East Tower, but contact with that guard is forbidden, and the gorge has landmines. As JD continues to show Levi around, he explains the mission. Every day, Levi must walk the western rim and restock the ammo in the automatic gun turrets, which are located every meter, and he must also check the containment fence, suspended mines, and clockers, which are devices that send false signals to all satellites to keep the gorge invisible. The radio checks in every 30 days, but there's no way to communicate with the outside world. In case of an emergency, there's a panic button that will activate the stray dog protocol. But JD doesn't know what that entails and advises Levi to run if it ever happens. JD explains that this place is as old as the Cold War. Back then, military teams from different nations made a pact to keep the place secret. So not even heads of state and presidents know about it, and Levi's job is to keep it as it is. It seems insane, and JD did too until he saw the guards' hollow men shrieking in the gorge. JD says that in the late 2000s, 3 horseback battalions were sent into the gorge. Their job was to clean it, but nobody returned, so the military is concentrating on doing containment instead. Afterward, JD leaves the tower and hikes all the way to the pickup point. A helicopter picks him up with a rope, and a soldier asks for his identity. Once JD says the password, the soldier shoots him in the head and drops his body in the mountains. A month later, Levi has gotten used to his very boring routine. He does all the maintenance on the security systems and does his check-in on the radio. The other voice just wants to know if everything is okay and hangs up before Levi can ask questions. While working on the garden, Levi notices some movement on the other tower. He rushes to his binoculars and sees Dresa cutting wood, and she sees him too, but ignores him. One night during a storm, Levi is startled awake by a nightmare and breaks a glass. This makes him think he's being attacked, and he grabs a gun, and when he feels pain in his foot, he realizes he stepped on the glass and it was only an accident and calms down. While cleaning his foot, he notices that Dresa is still awake and watching him. However, she goes to bed when she notices him watching her back. Another month passes, and she shoots a gun to get Levi's attention and holds up a sign, asking for his name, and Levi writes back that they aren't supposed to talk. So Dresa responds with her name and saying she'll do whatever she wants on her birthday. Amused, Levi replies with his name too and raises a glass so they can make a toast. Next, Dresa plays music really loudly, and while she dances, she asks Levi to dance along. He explains he is a terrible dancer but an amazing sniper, so Dresa responds by shooting his bottle. Levi quickly grabs his gun and shoots her bottle too, then Dresa puts another bottle on her head. Intending to continue the game, however, she stops everything when she notices something moving. When Levi looks down, he discovers strange creatures that look like people made of trees. They were climbing up his side of the gorge wall, and he immediately shoots one of these monsters. It causes them to fall onto a mine, which blows up and brings most of the climbers down. A few are left, so Levi continues shooting and Dresa helps him using her machine gun. By working together, they bring down all the creatures in a matter of minutes. When they think it's over, a creature reaches Dresa's balcony and she shoots it with her gun and kicks it off, and then the monsters begin climbing the wall on her side. Another creature falls on a mine and a new explosion happens, causing a piece of metal to fly. Dresa's shoulder gets hurt and the creatures start climbing both walls at the same time. Levi and Dresa use the machine guns to kill them and activate more mines as backup, effectively killing the monsters until no more show up, and later morning Dresa dresses her wounds. She tells Levi it was her best birthday ever, and then he goes down to fix all the damage. He replaces the mines, and suddenly a drone flies out of the gorge and flies off. In December, Levi puts up a bunch of lights around a tree in the forest to simulate a Christmas tree. He also puts up a sign for Dresa, and from then on they start spending time together, like making snowmen with each other's names, playing chess, and playing drums made of pots. On February 14th, Levi sees Dresa crying in front of a family picture. He asks why she didn't go on patrol earlier, and she tells him she's been having a hard day, and she wishes he could be there with her, and Levi uses all the tools from the armory. Levi builds a special contraption and shoots a rocket across the gorge, which gets stuck on a tree, and it also starts a fire, and Dresa runs to put it off. She notices there's a rope attached to the rocket, and she ties the rope firmly to the tree. She runs back to the tower, where she sees Levi asking her to dinner. Then Levi slides down the rope to cross the gorge, only to get stuck midway. Luckily, he's wearing gloves, so he uses his hands to grab the rope and keep on moving. Soon he makes it to Dresa's tower and gives her flowers, and she points out he stinks. So Levi agrees to take a shower, and while he's washing, Dresa takes his uniform and leaves some nice clothes from a previous occupant, and during dinner they have a chat. Then they share a dance and make out, and in the morning Levi begins sliding on the rope to return. The hollow men appeared on his wall and hit a mine, causing a huge explosion that cuts the rope. Levi begins falling and immediately opens his parachute while Dresa rushes to her armory. She grabs a bunch of weapons and a parachute of her own, and she jumps into the gorge. After a few miles of falling, she lands right into a river, and on the surface her parachute gets stuck. Dresa cuts it off, and the current immediately begins pushing her, and her body hits a rock. And she drops the auto-ascender and held onto some tree roots. Meanwhile, Levi is unconscious. He is hanging off a tree, and suddenly a monster comes closer, but Levi wakes up and shoots at it. He untangles the ropes from the tree, and he falls to the ground and lands on what appears to be mud. But turns out it's actually the mouth of another monster, and it traps him as its mouth closes. Dresa heard the gunshots and arrives and does an open fire at the creature, rescuing Levi just in time. Dresa gets the substance off Levi's body with a knife, and they start making their way to find the rope. Suddenly, they hear screeching before two hollow men appear on horses that also look like trees. The riders keep attacking Levi and Dresa with swords, and one of them jumps off the horse to attack. She stabs it in the neck with a knife to make him fall, and then shoots it in the face. The other rider takes Levi's gun using a whip and shoots both the horse and the rider. Afterward, Dresa checks her bag and discovers the auto-ascender fell in the river. Since the walls are too high for them to climb, they're stuck there. She thinks they should follow the river, because it has to drain out somewhere. Levi takes a closer look at the creature he killed and discovers a very old military uniform. This means Hollow Men are the lost horseback battalions from the story. The duo keeps moving through the forest, finding hundreds of skeletons on the way. Eventually, they find an abandoned town where all the buildings are covered by mutated plants. They hear the monsters screeching and hide inside a church, where they find skeletons on the seats. Levi smells cyanide, which means these people killed themselves, and suddenly they hear a noise. Dresa looks up to find a huge spider, and it jumps to attack her, and she immediately pushes it off. She falls to the ground and sees another spider coming, and she stabs it, and 2 more spiders attack Levi. He quickly shoots them, and soon lots of spiders surround them, and both soldiers open fire. Dresa runs out of bullets, so Levi rescues her while she reloads, and they start heading toward the door. But at that moment, some Hollow Men burst in, and Dresa begins pounding a creature's head on a table. She throws it off, and the spiders start climbing on it too, and Levi fights off creatures and shoots them. Then Dresa shoots a grenade at the back wall to make a huge hole that allows them to escape. Levi and Dresa run through the forest, but they can still hear creatures screeching in the distance. Since they're too exposed here, they decide to go closer to the wall, and they find an old door. They step inside to discover a facility that was overtaken by the plants. They find that this used to be a military lab, and there are skeletons and a generator. Dresa turns it on, and Levi finds a tape and plays it on the projector, and there was a scientist in the film. She explains that it's 1940, and this community was formed as part of a top-secret coalition of nations. During the last years of World War II, they worked on creating biochemical missiles. However, 6 days before the recording of this film, an earthquake hit the area and caused a chemical leak, and the scientists started to work around the clock to contain the toxin, which soon merged with the DNA of the local flora and fauna and mutated them. The woman on the screen shows the branches on her stomach and effects of the chemical. Since the base was in the gorge, the toxin never reached the rest of humanity. Levi and Dresa found a working computer, which meant people still visit to continue the experiment. Levi runs the computer and discovers this place belongs to Dark Lake, a private paramilitary corporation. The drone they saw the other day was collecting samples for Dark Lake's experiments, which are trying to create super soldiers, and Levi also finds out about the stray dog protocol, which turns out to be a nuclear bomb that will sterilize the area if a leak happens. They open the door and throw a smoke grenade before coming out, and suddenly a whip grabs her ankle and drags her through the forest. Dresa tries cutting the whip with her knife, but is unsuccessful. Levi follows the rider's tracks and eventually ends up finding the facility with a nuclear bomb inside. Hollow Man hung Dresa and turns the branch stuck in her stomach to torture her before taking it out. Dresa kicks him in the chest and untangles the ropes from the beam to free herself. She attacks him, but he keeps overpowering her, and the snake in his chest tries to attack her. She manages to decapitate the snake, and Hollow Man begins chasing her around the room. He attacks her with his sword, and Dresa uses bones as a shield and burns him. As the Hollow Man yells in pain, Levi finally arrives and shoots him to death. After the soldiers reunite, and Levi checks the Hollow Man and notices the name in the uniform. He recognizes it as the first guard that worked in his tower and takes the creature's sword. The duo starts making their way out and finds the place where the initial leak happened. There are mutated creatures everywhere stuck in the goo created by the toxin. Levi and Dresa begin crossing the bridge. Dresa accidentally steps on a root, and the bodies begin falling. Levi uses the sword to quickly cut all the roots, and soon bigger creatures raise. Levi continues to open the way with the sword. A whip grabs his ankle, and Dresa shoots a grenade. It causes a big explosion, and the creatures catch on fire, and the flames spread quickly. They run to the stairs, and afterward they search the town and find military jeeps in a garage. They take off in one of the jeeps, driving for hours until they find the broken rope. Levi immediately ties the rope to the jeep, and Dresa shoots at the hollow men who try to approach. When she runs out of bullets, they just trade places and they begin ascending the wall. It goes well for a while, but they discover the hollow men are climbing to follow them. They kick one off, and Levi begins using the sword to kill the others, and Dresa finds an axe in the toolbox. She uses it to kill creatures, and Levi pushes a monster against the wheels. Dresa hits one that lands on the front window, and a hollow man jumps to push Levi. Levi manages to grab onto the jeep at the last second, but is left hanging. He stabs the jeep's gas tank and throws it at the creatures, and the jeep explodes. Levi breaks his leg when he hits the wall, and Dresa helps him up, and they're closer to the top now. They decide to cut the rope and let the jeep go down, taking down the remaining hollow. Afterward, the duo climbs the rest of the way and returns to Dresa's tower. While taking care of their injuries, they agree to stay apart as quarantine in case they're infected. They also want to run away together, so they make a plan to destroy the Gorge. They share a kiss, and Levi tells Dresa that he loves her before jumping back to his own tower. The next day, instead of the usual call, Levi's call is picked up by Bartholomew. She has learned that the computer in the lab was turned on, but Levi denies going into the Gorge. Bartholomew concludes that the person in the other tower did, so Levi's new mission is to kill them. Levi pretends to accept the mission, and the call ends. However, the lab computer had a camera. Bartholomew knows both soldiers were down there, so she calls a commander and orders him to get a team ready to visit the Gorge. And the next morning at the Gorge, they see a helicopter coming, so they immediately start running through the forest. When the soldiers find the towers empty, they send out drones, and a chase begins. The drones quickly open fire, and Levi and Dresa shoot back, bringing them all down one by one, while getting a few injuries in the process. And once they reach a spot high enough, they get into their sniper positions and shoot the cloakers and the mines they installed earlier. They create a chain reaction that starts destroying all the cloakers in the area. The Gorge is now exposed, and the stray dog protocol activates. Bartholomew and her team rush to the helicopter to fly away, while Levi and Dresa run as fast as they can. The nuclear bomb goes off, and the enormous explosion brings down the helicopter. Levi is pushed by the explosion too, and he falls off the edge of a cliff into a river. Dresa manages to escape and hides in a cave and waits for Levi. After a month of no news from her boyfriend, Dresa decides to leave alone. Sometime later in France, Dresa is working as a waitress, and she's shocked to find Levi sitting at a table. He explains it took him a while to recover from his injuries, and they reunite with a kiss.